What if I told you that the Jewish Holocaust has been greatly exaggerated and overpropagated into the world's collective conscious in order to distract the world's attention away from the true fact that history's worst Holocausts were those implemented by the white society against people of color? It's a fact that millions of more people of color died at the hands of the white society than the number of Jews killed by the Nazis. But the collective minds of the masses have been deliberately shifted away from this reality. This is all possible because the common beliefs and norms held within all societies are shaped by the narratives and media images that are repetitively fed into a society. To understand how this is possible, you have to learn how narratives impact society. The narratives fed into a society shapes our lives, our culture, and our reality. What a society believes and how it functions is literally scripted by those who write the narratives and controls the media images that are fed into a society. The white society has exploited its monopoly over narratives and media images that are fed into a society to shape the collective perceptions of the masses in ways that serves the white society. It's called social engineering of society. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact that many are totally ignorant of. The subliminal manipulation of the subconscious minds of large targeted populations through propaganda that are repetitively fed into a society is a true social science fact. It allows governments and the ruling class to control the masses and targeted populations. It is a discipline in the social science that refers to efforts to influence particular attitudes and social behaviors on a large scale in order to produce desired characteristics in a targeted population. The hypothesis behind this social engineering tactic is that if the societal information given to a targeted population can be controlled, then that population's belief, thoughts, and behaviors can also be controlled. People are like computers. All you have to do is keep feeding them certain information and media images, and you can persuade an entire generation towards an applied objective. Because the white ruling class controls all of the societal information and media images that are routinely fed into our society, this allows them to manipulate the collective minds of the masses to think in ways that serves and protects the white society. Case, point, and proof. Have you ever wondered how is it possible that in spite of the Caucasians' brutal history of violence and oppression throughout history, that they're most often now favorably perceived as being the race possessing the highest moral character and ethics? And while black people, their most tortured victims, are perceived as being the worst. Throughout history, the Caucasians have demonstrated an entrenched predisposition for brutal racism that is matched only by their proclivity for deceit, greed, and hunger for power. They alone are the most arrogant and the race most predisposed to racism. Their history is consumed by unrivaled racism, as well as unjustifiable wars and crimes against humanity. Their subjugation, murder, and exploitation of all other races are unparalleled. All other races have been their enemies or their victims. The Caucasians have demonstrated an almost complete absence of ethical and moral behavior and an almost total disregard for the human lives of non-whites. Against people of color, the Caucasians have committed crimes against humanity. They have committed mass genocide, enslavement, lynching, castrations, and decapitations, and the raping of men, women, and children. While labeling all other races as being savages throughout history, the Caucasians have in fact been the most brutally savage throughout history. Yet, today, in spite of their brutal history to the contrary, The Caucasians are now most often favorably perceived as being the race possessing the highest moral and character. And black people, their arguably most tortured victims, are perceived as the group possessing the least moral character. What explains such an immense contradiction? What explains this? The reason for this profound contradiction is because public perception is not shaped based upon facts nor reality. Public perception is shaped by the narratives and media images that are fed into a society. The white ruling class systematically feeds false white exalting and false black denigrating narratives and media images into a society. It's being done through movies, TV shows, magazines, books, and through miseducation that we're taught. The public will then function based upon their perceptions created by those distortions that have been fed into our society. This is the true reason why, in spite of their brutal history to the contrary, Caucasians are known most often favorably perceived as being the racial group possessing the highest moral character, and black people are perceived as a group possessing the worst. Most common beliefs and cultural norms held by society were hardwired into the collective conscious of the masses through the same repetitive media propaganda programming. It's how society is socially engineered. Even when we don't realize it, we're constantly being inundated with propaganda that are designed to engender favorable perceptions about whites and negative perceptions about blacks. Through this nefarious practice, the white society has literally given themselves a favorable image makeover, while at the same time vilifying and denigrating the image of black people in order to falsely validate their mistreatments of black people. It's a propaganda tactic known as manufactured consent to mistreat. This media framing is why black people are often negatively perceived as being more likely to engage in violence and crimes, and why whites are perceived as less likely to engage in violence and crime, when in reality, most crimes in the U.S. are committed by whites. Most violence is committed by whites. Our perception of reality is a white deception. There are those who work behind the scenes, and their mission is to keep our minds dumbed down. We run to our Bibles, not realizing that the Bible is a tool that's used to keep our minds dumbed down. We run to a Willie Lynch myth, not realizing these are also tools, these are distractions that keeps our minds dumbed down. We have to learn that there are social sciences that are being used for maintaining white dominance. More specifically, social sciences that are being used to create and sustain false assumptions within a society that aids the white society in maintaining its social dominance over black people. We have to learn these tactics in order to liberate ourselves. Because if our understandings of our plight and condition remains flawed, then all liberating remedies that stems from them will also be flawed. We have to learn social science. We have to learn the truth of our plight and condition. And to do so, we have to elevate our minds. Learn the truth. One love and peace.